So there are four main reasons why sleep is the foundation to unlocking your true potential. Okay, so for the first point, sleep directly affects self-education in that sleep affects how much that you can remember and how much your brain stores on a day-to-day basis. So basically what happens when you sleep, your body goes into one of three phases, right? It goes to phase 1, to phase 2, and to phase 3. Each phase goes into deeper sleep, and the deeper your sleep, the more your brain is able to consolidate and to store all the information that you gained from the previous day in order to make it easier for you to recall that information and to basically remember what you learned. And so basically, the more sleep cycles you get, so the more you go through each of those phases 3 times, 1, 2, 3, that equals one sleep cycle, the deeper you sleep and the more sleep cycles you have throughout the night, the better your brain is at storing, consolidating that information. Basically, you remember better. And that is critical when it comes to self-education because you don't want to be reading a book and then getting terrible sleep to where your brain actually forgets the information or doesn't store it correctly for you to be able to recall it, and it ends up just being a massive waste of time. So it's much better to focus on getting better sleep and learning a little bit less rather than learning a ton and then sleeping less because you won't retain as much. And a critical thing to understand about self-education and learning in general is that knowledge builds on top of itself, right? So when you read 5 books, like you read book 1, book 2, book 3, and then book 4, and then say book 5 is going to hit different because of those 4 previous books as opposed to if you just read book 5 by itself, right? Knowledge builds on itself and it connects to itself, and that's how you retain it more, and that's how you get more powerful, stronger ideas that can actually change your life moving forward. And so when you put your body in a situation where you're feeding it the information that it needs in order to unlock your true potential and give you the life that you want, if you can't retain any of that information or store it so that you can recall it, it's a massive waste of time. And that's why it's important to prioritize sleep, making sure you're getting 7 to 8 hours, making sure that you're getting that deep sleep so that you can remember everything that you learn, or it's all a waste of time. Okay, so the second point, how sleep affects your ability to unlock your true potential, this one comes into or focuses more on our output, right? So if you're working, if you have a profession, then your output would be your work. If you're a student and you're studying, your output would be your how you study, and then therefore how you take tests and how you're passing your classes and how you're learning, how much retention you're getting. And so what happens is when we don't get enough sleep, your brain still needs sleep in order to operate the way it needs to operate. And so what happens is you'll actually, in somewhat of a way, you'll actually sleepwalk. Your brain will actually put certain functions to sleep in order to get the rest that it needs in order to continue to operate. And so you'll enter this zombie-like state where your brain is actually operating well below its functional or cognitive capacity, in which case it affects the quality of your work or the quality of your study, affects how you remember, it affects the quality of your decisions and just your focus in general. And I'm sure a lot of us can probably relate. Those days where you get less than normal amount of sleep, you quite literally, your brain feels like it's turned off and you're kind of just walking through life and kind of just getting by at the bare minimum. It's very automatic. And that's literally your brain turning off certain functions so that certain functions in your brain can get the rest that they need. And so you are much better off productivity wise actually giving your brain the rest that it needs, and so that the time you are spent awake, you're actually operating at full capacity, making the best decisions possible, learning as much as you can in the small time frame and being able to remember it, and all of that. And so basically when we don't give the brain enough sleep, it puts us into a zombie-like state, and makes it really hard for us to operate at our true potential. And that really scales over time. When a lot of people live their entire life in this zombie-like state and they can't really seem to get ahead, right? When you take a look at what your life would be if you were operating at full capacity at all times versus when you're operating at that zombie state at all times, the difference is astronomical, especially over time. So it's key to unlocking your true potential to get enough sleep to give your brain the rest it needs in order to avoid that zombie-like state. Okay, third reason why sleep directly affects your ability to unlock your true potential. The third reason is that lack of sleep affects your mindset. Now, we talked on the channel previously about how the brain is split into two, right? You have your conscious and your subconscious. Your subconscious is responsible for your automatic system, your habits, breathing, things that you don't have to think to do. Your conscience is responsible for your non-automatic system. So for like me moving my hand, or me talking to you right now, or me deciding to get up and go to the bathroom or something like that, something that's not a habit, that is what the conscious mind is responsible for. Now, your mindset is your conscience's mind. It's that conscious mind's operating system. It's how it decides and how it thinks. So it's how I'm going to make the decision to go get up and go to the bathroom. That's your mindset. It's your operating system. Now, so that's your mindset, right? So now that's important because, like we talked in the previous point, when you don't get enough sleep, you enter that zombie-like state. And remember, that zombie-like state turns off portions of your brain. Well, it turns out it turns off a lot of the conscious side of your brain, which in effect turns off your mindset, which then greatly affects your willpower. So when you're going through that zombie-like state, your subconscious is much more powerful than your conscience, meaning your automatic system takes over and you kind of default to your habits. So kind of taking all that talk and applying it into a real life scenario that I'm sure you've probably experienced, is when on the days that you don't get enough sleep or that you lack sleep, or just your sleep routine is thrown off in general, you have less willpower and you default to that which is comfortable, right? As opposed to, on days that you do get enough sleep, you do have that willpower. You have that willpower to make conscious decisions that benefit you long term. So it's the difference between not getting enough sleep, your automatic system takes over, you walk by a dozen donuts, and you eat those donuts because that's just your automatic system operating at its normal level. Your conscious system doesn't have a chance to interject and be like, whoa, wait, we're on a diet, or that's not going to help us long term, that's going to make us fatter. Your conscience doesn't have the ability to intervene, right? You don't have the willpower, you don't have the discipline. And so you contrast that with days that you do get enough sleep, where you do have that willpower, where your conscience operating system, your mindset can kick in and make those long-term decisions that will benefit you. Those are the difference between the days of not getting enough sleep and getting enough sleep. Is when you get enough sleep, you actually have the willpower, the mindset, in order to avoid that zombie-like state that turns off your conscience, which allows you to make beneficial decisions and have your brain operate at its full potential, ongoing, day in and day out, which will speak volumes over time. So it's critical that you get enough sleep so that you actually have the willpower, that you have the conscious mindset in place in order to make those decisions that will benefit you long term. Okay, the fourth point why sleep is directly influences your ability to unlock your true potential is that sleep directly affects your health and safety. So first off, I don't think I have to point it out too much, but when, of course, that zombie-like state where your conscience is mostly turned off is not safe for driving. I know at least in America, there are more car accidents caused by sleep deprivation than drugs and alcohol combined. So the vast majority of accidents happen because the conscious side is turned off, and you're just operating off of your automatic mindset, and it doesn't do well when you're going 70 miles an hour in a very powerful vehicle, right? If your brain isn't all the way there, it becomes a very dangerous situation. So that in of itself is already a danger. But it turns out that your body has something called these natural killer cells, and these cells function. Their primary function is to search and destroy other cells, potentially dangerous cells like tumorous cells or cancerous cells. And that's their job, is they just search and destroy, tumors before they actually become tumors. Now, what they have found is that if you just have just one day where you only get 4 hours of sleep, those natural killer cells, their activity drops 70% because you don't have enough energy to actually go search and destroy. And so what happens is that over time, when you don't get enough sleep, those cells don't operate at their full potential, and they're unable to locate dangerous cells like cancerous cells, and you end up getting cancer. The science is actually so clear that the World Health Organization has actually classified overnight work as a potential carcinogen, meaning that it's potentially, or it has a high risk of, you have a high risk of getting cancer from that job, from that work, because your sleep schedule is so thrown off when you're working at night, that those workers tend to have a much higher rate of cancer because those natural killer cells aren't actually getting in and doing their job. And so it's critical to, it's obvious that living well and being safe is critical to your long-term productivity, because you can't really be productive when you're dead. And so that's how sleep directly affects your health and safety, not only driving and making critical safety decisions, but also your body's natural killer cells activity is very, very low when you don't get enough sleep. Those are the 4 key reasons why sleep is the underlying foundation to unlocking your true potential. Again, the first is it directly affects your self-education, because if you don't sleep well, your body can't encode the information it gained from the previous day, and so you're unable to remember what you learned, which is very unproductive when it comes to reading books and watching YouTube videos that could benefit you long term. The second reason is that sleep directly affects your output, whether that be work or study. Your brain is operating at a lower capacity, which affects the decisions that you make, which affects how much you remember, and so the quality of your work and study suffers dramatically, given that your brain enters this zombie-like state in order to give the parts of your brain rest that actually absolutely need rest. And of course that leads into the third point, which is sleep directly affects your mindset, or the conscience side of things, because your conscience is one of those sides, or one of the parts of your brain that gets shut down, not completely, but a lot of it gets shut down, so you don't have a lot of willpower in order to make those critical long-term decisions that will benefit your future. And then of course, just to wrap it all up into the fourth point of the lack of sleep directly affects your health and safety, because when you don't sleep enough, that zombie-like state is very dangerous when you're behind the wheel of a car, and it's also very dangerous for your body in general not to get enough sleep, because the natural killer cells that are designed to search and destroy other dangerous cells in your body are operating at a much lower capacity, to where over time they're just not operating at a high enough capacity to keep your body safe from cancer and other diseases, and you end up passing away because of those factors. So that is why sleep is the underlying foundation to unlocking your true potential, and that's what we're all about here at Bite Size Success. And so I hope you'll take sleep seriously. I know it's something that I'm definitely reconsidering a lot now, doing this study on sleep. being working a lot and then having a YouTube channel and then having a family and young kids, you don't get a ton of sleep. But after doing all this research, it's definitely making me reconsider and prioritize sleep again, because without it, nothing else has quality and nothing else has much value. So I'm reconsidering, and I hope that you will also reconsider and take it seriously. So thank you so much for watching. I wish you the very best of luck, and I'll see you in my next video.